Vanessa Kirby, you're back in The Crown Season 2 as Princess Margaret after a season where Margaret had a thwarted romance with an older man, Peter Townsend. What were you most excited about to explore about Margaret going into the second season?
I mean, really I just love her so much. It was like such a, it was so exciting to know that I was coming back anyway. I guess it was such a gift. But I suppose just growing up with her in this season and getting to go darker with her and really look at how somebody tries to recover from that, like you said, thwarted, I mean, horrendous what she went through. And also then obviously Tony Armstrong-Jones coming in out of nowhere and knowing that this really different kind of man and also this really different kind of energy was going to come into the season and sort of like blast away the cobwebs of the palace and the royals. That was really exciting.
And this is the show Mark growing up in important ways. What would you say the biggest differences between her in season 2 versus season 1?
Well, I think she definitely feels like she becomes more of a woman, and I think in a way I always felt like this season was her attempt to find herself, because in season 1 you see her sort of push against her identity, like trying to find her identity where she's got she's so sort of essentially royal and she's so utterly a princess, more than Elizabeth even, and yet she's trying to define her role and understand who she is and where she belongs within that, and also not wanting to be a part of it at all. And this seemed like a deeper exploration of that, really, because the very establishment that's so her and is in her blood was also the one that robbed her really of the life that she wanted. And so how do then she begin to define herself within that? How does the person grow up within those? It's like a bird in a cage, I always saw her as. And then Tony, I think, really, really represents and the kind of passion and fever which he goes into everything, but especially with him, I think really represents her as a sort of hybrid, really. You know, I'm a princess and yet I'm with the people. You know, I'm with this man who's this rogue, rebellious, elusive, bohemian photographer that's very much 60s London. And it's not like my family, and he loathes what I represent, and I find that dangerous and sexy and cool. And yeah, what a long-winded answer. I could talk about it forever. I probably need to shut up.
It's interesting. Margaret can be such a provocative character at times, especially for a princess of that period. Do you think she was really ahead of her time and maybe would have been more accepted and had an easier time if she were a young princess, maybe in 2017?
Yeah, I mean, I think for anybody that has that level of protocol and institution, and the fact that Tommy Lascelles is having conversations with her sister and making decisions about her life, you know. I mean, you look at it with Harry, everyone's asking us about Harry and Meghan as if we're the authority on how they feel. It's so funny. But I mean, the fact that she's divorced and no one's commented on it, you know, it's just crazy that just because you've been married to somebody else that you then can't do something. So I think the fact that she was like a rebel of her times within her own parameters, wasn't she? Because she was also so opposite to her sister, who was so dutiful and steadfast and contained in a way. And Margaret was this sort of highly emotional, very sensitive, always wanted to be rock and roll, but couldn't quite get there in the full sense of it. And I think everyone views her as a modern woman. And I think what she really wanted to do was change. You know, she was an advocate of change, and that's probably why she feels modern, because I think there's a lot of changes going on for women at the moment, and speaking out is more important than ever.
Had you been very familiar with Princess Margaret before you had originally taken this role, and how much did you learn about her over the course of these 2 seasons?
Oh my God, I don't think I know anyone better now. I mean, not to say I played her. I probably could have played it better, but in terms of, I suppose, the level of research, I was so scared playing somebody real. I felt like a duty to try and, you know, she's not around anymore, obviously, so it felt like it did feel really daunting. But I just tried to read everything that I possibly could, and there were so many different sources, you know, of stuff like super scholarly, really sort of royalist ones that like really faithful and clearly were writing it thinking the Queen might read this, as well as the kind of more raunchy ones that I loved because they were much more kind of first-hand accounts and stories that would never be allowed in the more royalist ones. So that was really cool. As well as like a really useful thing was listening to all her favorite music. So listening to, you know, the things that like lit her up, I guess. And she has this amazing Desert Island Discs on YouTube. I listened to that non-stop, and especially in the morning, sometimes before scenes, I was like trying to absorb her because it's quite crazy. I've never played a real person before, and it was quite yeah, it was quite scary. But we were all in the same boat, so we just thought we all go down together in a way.
Was there anything about, you know, learning about her and playing her that surprised you the most about who she was and what she experienced?
You know what? I mean, because I knew nothing about her at all, and I've actually felt quite ignorant. I realized when I came to the kind of screen test and I was just reading everything I could, I was like, oh my God, I literally knew she was the Queen's sister and that was it. And I don't know why. Maybe because she became less. She was less in the public eye, wasn't she, the older she got? Which is something quite, and then people called her a tragic figure. And I suppose there is something quite tragic as this, she was like the center and the icon and the leader at the time. You know, such a fashion leader and all the front pages and very much courted it. And then sort of became slightly less, she just became, the Queen's sister. That's what I knew her as. And so then when I started to read about her, pretty much everything surprised me. In a great way, because I was like, this is an amazing woman I knew nothing about. And I also felt, ignorant that I didn't know anything about her and Peter Townsend and how much that was so part of the nation's history, but also the conversation at the time, and how much the public engaged with it, how much they wanted her to be able to marry him, kind of the old meets the new, and how tragic it was, and the fact that I didn't know anything about it. I felt really proud, actually, that in a way it's come back into memory, because it deserves to be remembered. When I read some of their letters from each other, it just like broke my heart, and I couldn't believe that I didn't know about it. So I was really glad. So that surprised me. Plus, she's just so funny, isn't she? There's so many stories of her doing really outrageous things from very early on. She did loads of prank jokes there when she was growing up, which Elizabeth never got involved in. And she did things like stub out her cigarettes on the starter at dinner party if she didn't like it. You know, like amazing. There's no one like that. I've never known anyone like that. Like to be so unapologetically herself and so cool and, you know, vivid. Yeah.
Now, after all the drama of Peter Townsend in the first season, you know, as you mentioned, this season introduces Tony Armstrong Jones, played by Matthew Goode, who would become her husband. You know, what was it like working with Matthew Goode this season on this very intense, very different kind of romance?
Oh, he's so cool. He's like the most fun in the world. From like the minute he comes into the makeup trailer, he kind of like storms in. He's got so much energy and like charisma, and he's funny and he's silly. And Ben Karen, the director, and Matt and I had to work really closely to try and like work out how to do it, how to play it out. And we just had so much fun. I mean, literally didn't stop laughing, like probably to the detriment. I think we pissed around far too much, but it was kind of great to sort of develop the intimacy between them. And he's also such a great actor. He really like transforms. He's nothing like Tony at all. Like Tony's like quite weird, you know. He's quite weird in the show, isn't he? He's quite kind of sinister, but like sexy and elusive and cool. And Matt's not as clumsy as I am, but like nearly. And like massive laugh. He's amazing. You guys will love him. He's just the best.
Another major aspect of her story, Margaret's story, has been her relationship with her sister, Queen Elizabeth II, which is often strained, to say the least. You know, do you think they might have gotten along better without the burden of their royal titles, or do you think it's just a matter of their personalities just being so conflicting?
Yeah, well, that's the thing that I read first about them, was that there were never two sisters less alike. So that was really interesting, always trying to look for the contrast between them. they really were so different. But also what's really interesting exploring them as kids growing up was that I guess once David had abdicated and once George took over, or Albert, everybody knowing that Elizabeth was going to inherit the throne and the nation and the history and everything else. And therefore, I think she was always treated differently by everybody. And if your father calls Elizabeth the pride and Margaret's his joy, I think maybe inherently feeling inferior in some way because you're younger. And because you're born younger, that means that your life is set out completely differently to your older sister. And how that would affect your psyche and like your like mind forming and your personality, you probably would exacerbate the joyful qualities more and the playful qualities more and the outspokenness and the sort of I always imagine that, because if that's what you're getting praised for by your father in some way, to try and make it up. So it's really interesting to think about how early on that would have started between them. And then obviously have your father die prematurely and how you'd think that it was at least 20 years off. So suddenly that to happen when you're 21 and you are the center of things at that time. Your father dies and suddenly you're not. And your sister has this job and is busy with her kids. And your mum's in her own grief and you're very alone. And I always felt her sense of loneliness actually after the king died. And it was a transition we really wanted to mark. Once the king dies, something changes in her, and I don't think she ever recovers.
Do you ever imagine, how things might have been if maybe Margaret had been born older and she had become queen, and Elizabeth had been the younger sister who was kind of off to the side?
Yeah, I imagine it a lot because it would be so fun. I think it would probably get horribly out of control. And apparently she always turned up late for things. And she always made massive demands. I think she would have been hilarious. I don't know quite how well it would have gone. I think she would have lost her temper at probably everybody. But one thing I read recently as well actually was that her parents always would say, "Oh, the right one was born first," and they would say it at parties and among their friends. And imagine hearing that as a little girl, and that the insecurity, I suppose, that would generate. But I think in that way, the conflict between the sisters and the sort of resentment, tension, and sibling rivalry is already there. And then have your father taken away, and suddenly your big sister's queen, and actually gets to decide whether you can marry the man you love or not. And you feel like you don't have a role, and you feel a bit out of orbit in a way. I guess it was such a fascinating relationship to play. Yeah. And quite hard to know whether, even in this season, there's a scene in episode 7 where Margaret's saying, "Can I please finally marry? Totally, you let me." And it felt like we'd had the same conversation about 8 times. Claire and I were like, how are we going to play this different? And for a while I was like, maybe we could play it where Margaret's finds some kind of peace and there's some kind of redemption in it or reconciliation, and maybe we could. And I tried it and it just didn't work. Because it didn't, and Ben, the director, was really adamant that she'd still have so much of her guard up and not be able to be truly vulnerable with her sister and forgive her, because it's not like they sat down with a therapist or anything, worked it all out. You know what I mean? Like that never happened. And so I think in our story anyway, the queen would probably think. What? I was like fine with my sister. I don't know, who knows? But in our story, we always try to follow the kind of the psychological truth or the realism as much as possible. But what we imagined made sense in our story anyway.
Before Margaret meets Tony in season 2, we see a period for her where she's hitting some really incredibly low points personally. What was it like getting into those deeper moments of loneliness and really depression she seems to be suffering at that point?
Yeah, it was so wonderful to be able to explore, really, because I always knew Margaret was capable of it, and Peter and I had long conversations about her in the way that Elizabeth, I think, contains all her feelings and just gets on with it and buries them and kind of is quite moderate. Margaret lives in extremes, so she'll feel things very deep. She had like static highs and like very deep lows. And so I always imagined that, like a really thing that I always imagined that really helped me in season 1 was thinking about that Margaret had those dark nights of the soul. It was like, what was she like on her own? She's alone in this huge house with just her mum upstairs. Like, what does she do? And we know that she drinks a lot. We know that she's quite hedonistic. But when she's on her own, what's she like? And I always imagined her having quite a lot of existential anxiety or like pain, really. And so the episode 4 was such a kind of beautiful opportunity to explore that part of her, really, and see more into her psyche, especially she's gone through something just so unthinkable, really, and unable to do anything about it and be totally powerless. And there was this one scene that Peter wrote, which was Margaret does a melancholy dance in her bedroom, and we were like, right, okay, it's not really do melancholy, like, she shouldn't just do melancholy, like, how does Margaret do melancholy? And so we explored the idea of how far we could push it, I guess. And there was this brilliant movement director. We chose this song and we just did it for a whole afternoon and like really tried to push it as much. And I think it's only like a 30-second clip in the actual episode. But like I got whiplash from it the next day. I was like flinging my head around, like trashing the room, and it was I guess it was her pain, really. But at the end of season 1, there's something like, I don't understand. I'm unhinged without him. I'm flailing about. I'm lost. So somebody that actually worries about being unhinged and really admits in their most vulnerable moment to their family really suggests that she is, she has a lot of grief and a lot of pain that we never got to explore. And then Tony comes in and distracts her from it. And he really is a huge distraction, but not necessarily like a savior from it.
Now, going into season 3 next year, the characters will be aged to the next period of their lives. Olivia Colman has already been announced as the new Queen Elizabeth. What do you think about, the feeling of saying goodbye to the role of Margaret and passing her along to another actress?
I was really sad on the last day. Like it's just been the happiest time of my life, and I felt so lucky that I've got to try and imagine being somebody as brilliant as she is. And so on the last day, I was really sad when I hung out the wig, and I was like, oh, when they said cut, they brought out champagne, and it was like a really big moment, and I was like crying, and Claire was like super chilled and just like totally cool and like brilliant. And then taking off the wig for the last time was like a real moment, just looking at that little wig that we've had has like been so Margaret for 2 and a bit years. But you know what, truthfully, she's so cool. It's going to be amazing for the next 2 actresses to play. And I'm so excited to talk to them about it. And it's so cool to be able to share it. And I can't wait to see what they do. It's only going to build and get better. And she gets so much fun stuff, I think, in the next 2 seasons. Like all the crazy rows with Tony and gangsters and Mystique. And it's going to be amazing. I'm really, really excited for whoever it is. I don't know who it is. Peter won't tell me.
So no inklings on who, or maybe a wish list of who you would love to see be the next Margaret after you?
Do you know what? I couldn't have a wish list, because whoever it will be, I would never want to, like, do you know what I mean? I haven't even let my mind go there. And plus I don't feel like an authority on it at all, actually. But yeah, I think Peter's talking to quite a few people, but he just won't tell me, which is so annoying, because 100% I just blurt it. I'll be like, I can't tell. Oh, it's like, I'm so bad at keeping anything. So yeah, I would love to know, but I don't. Yeah, I think Olivia's gonna be amazing though. She's got such a warmth, and I think it will be really interesting to see, won't it? How, I guess with everything, with every show, you just suspend your disbelief anyway. You know that we're actors playing the royal family, but you just go, okay, right, I'm just going to believe that they might be in this moment. Do you know what I mean? So maybe the same thing will happen. They'll go, okay, I know what the old queen was like. This is the same person, but it's Olivia, so we're going to go with it. You know what I mean? It's going to be really fascinating. I feel like it'll be amazing.
Well, I want to congratulate you on seasons 1 and 2 of The Crown, and best of luck with I believe Mission Impossible that you got coming up after this. Is that just a world apart?
So different. And I was filming night shoots on that as we were filming daytimes on the crown. So I take the wig off and go to Paris and shoot night shoots and like trying to work out how the hell to use a knife well, or like not look stupid with it. Yeah, it's totally different. It's totally different. But really fun and just like nothing I've ever done before. So yeah.
Well, congratulations on all of that, and you know, thank you so much for talking to me tonight.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely. Yeah. I spout on and on, I know.
Oh no, it's fantastic. Feel free. Have a great night.
Thanks, my love.